The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier access with Premier Panton.
Hello everyone, this is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Mar Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune into YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier Access on the Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We have Premier Access with none other than Mr. Wayne Panton himself. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's go ahead and bring him in. I know you guys always have a number of questions for the Premier. He decided to come in. I think he missed the previous time because of his commitments in Parliament. So he committed to coming on Christmas week of all weeks. So Mr. Panton, good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
It's good morning somewhere, Sandra, but
yes, I know. Just not in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here with you, and you know, it's a good week to just enjoy the weather and enjoy the Christmas spirit. You know, we have problems, we have issues, but those issues exist many times of the year, maybe in a different way. But we can still celebrate, despite the problems, despite the issues we have, we can still celebrate the Christmas spirit and spend time together, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us. Now, before we get into the Q&A segment, I know that on Monday you had a vaccine drive at your office. I think this is maybe the third one that you've had. Fourth.
Maybe the fourth. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah,
I think it's the fourth.
And how was it? How was the event on Monday?
Well, it was quite good. I was here pretty much all afternoon, and so I sort of got to see the build up of the line outside before the public health staff even arrived. So we ended up having.
Looks like your internet probably just tripped up there for a second.
Can you hear me?
Back. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
I
can hear you.
Hopefully the internet's not going to have any issues tonight.
No,
Oh, looks like we got a frozen screen. Let's give the Premier a second to get that sorted out. So thank you, Cameron, for joining in this evening. Miss Rovina is here. Miss Wee Wee is also watching, along with 64 other individuals tuned in. I noticed the numbers have dropped this week, I think because people were just busy getting ready for the season and, getting all the last minute things done before the big.
Camera. You hear me, Sandy? Hello?
Not at first, it was your connection, then looks like mine dropped for a second there as well. So I wonder if
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I think we might have had a little glitch with Flow. I don't know because my internet just dropped out for a brief second. Okay, you were telling us the last we heard, you were telling us a little bit about Monday's event.
So I was saying I was here all afternoon on Monday, and I saw the line building up. So we had a lot of people coming in. A lot of people came to. I think it was probably somewhere around 30 people getting first shots and 30 people getting second shots, and then the rest were boosters, and it was probably somewhere around 200 and something, 240, 250 people, I think, that came to get their boosters. So it was a very good showing for that. We do have a high percentage of vaccination, but what we do need now is for people who are double vaccinated to come and get their booster shots, because it's quite clear that from all the evidence that booster shots will provide significant additional protection against variants, and in particular the Omicron variant, which we now have in local transmission in Cayman. So that is really important for people to come out. If you are 18 or over, actually now we're down to 16. If you are 16 and over and you have had your shots for more than 3 months, you can get your booster shot. I don't know. Sandra, are we still live?
Oh yes, we're here.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that's what I want to encourage people to do. Come out and get your booster shots. It's really important to do that. It is going to make a difference. It's a considerable difference. Listen, I keep seeing people talking about and questioning whether the vaccine works. Let me tell you, folks, I look at the statistics every morning and every evening. And then if I don't get information on how people in the hospital who are very sick are doing, I call to find out how they're doing. And there is always the percentage of people who are unvaccinated and in hospital is always somewhere around the 80% mark or higher. I mean, it occasionally might dip down to 75. Sometimes it is at 100%. So the facts, absolute or indisputable facts, are that the vaccine helps people from getting sick and ending up in hospital. Um, is it 100% perfect? No. We occasionally have people who are double vaccinated who end up in hospital. The reality is that there are lots of people with different conditions, different what the medical experts call comorbidities, that make them very vulnerable. And even though they're double vaccinated, they end up in hospital. But those are the people that you tend to be able to nurse them back to health fairly quickly, and they get discharged and they go home, and they may stay home for a few more days until their symptoms disappear. But it is the people who are staying in hospital, and the majority of people who are in the hospital are those who are unvaccinated. So please, folks, listen to the science. Don't listen to those people out there who are, repeating other things that somebody else said or some little YouTube video said. Listen to your own doctors here. Listen to those people who are telling you the truth, because they have your interest at heart, and they have their own health at heart as well. They're going to be honest with you because they prefer to have you vaccinated, because you come in, you're less likely to come into the hospital if you're vaccinated. You're less likely to get infected. You are going to be sick for a shorter period of time if you do get sick, and you're going to be infectious for a shorter period of time as well. So nobody in the medical industry in Cayman, by and large, is going to tell you something that's inaccurate. Yes, we do have a few local doctors, and let's not sugarcoat it. We do have a few local doctors who are off on a tangent somewhere, who will tell you all sorts of inconsistent things, inconsistent with the vast majority view of the mainstream doctors in Cayman.
Right.
But listen to them if you want to, but you need to listen to the majority opinion. And the majority opinion, the mainstream doctors in Cayman will tell you, get vaccinated. It is what is going to help save your life.
Sorry.
This is just a fact. We're in a pandemic. We cannot ignore that reality. These challenges are going to continue with us for some time. And I need people in this country to listen, to get their vaccines, and to protect themselves as much as possible. It's been going well. I mean, I saw the numbers today. I think today at the site in town that was open all day, they had at McClendon Drive, I think they had a total of about 550 people who were boosted today, plus I can't remember what the numbers are for others who took their first shots and second shots. But a number of 550 being boosted, if we can do that every day, we're doing well. We're getting those numbers in.
Yeah.
But here's the reality, Sandra. Right now we have approximately 1 in every 5, maybe a little bit more than 1 in every 5 persons who are already double vaccinated, who now have had the booster. We need to get that. We need to get that up to 4 out of every 5 or higher, because that is what's going to really give people a lot of protection. The current science says that once you get that booster shot, it really ramps up your antibody levels, and people will have, I think it improves your protection even against Omicron up to about 75%. And that's very good by any measure. So I really am encouraging everybody to go out and get your booster shot, because you don't want to be sick. You don't want to have your family and your friends go through the pain and suffering of watching you being sick or possibly losing your life because you didn't want to go and get that booster shot.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen a few cases, unfortunately, with individuals who otherwise would not have even been in the hospital had it not been for the virus. They may have had underlying conditions, but I think at least one individual, there weren't really any that anyone seems to be aware of, and they end up dying because of not being vaccinated, really, because of COVID. So it's it's really sad. So thank you for that reminder of the important message that we need to do our part. And I've just seen, we do have a first question here. My apologies, from Lily, who says, is the Premier having any thoughts about the vaccine for kids? And I just saw actually news as well that the UK has now signed off on or authorized the vaccine for children ages 5 to 11. So
Right.
now that the UK has done so, obviously that paves the way for us to do so as well. What are your thoughts, as Lily says, on that move?
Okay, so we have been waiting patiently for the UK regulatory agency, which is called MHRA, waiting for them to approve the Pfizer 5 to 11 shot.
Mm-hmm.
They have now done that. While we were waiting for them, we were trying another avenue to see if we could get access through Pfizer itself, for the country itself to be able to access the shot. And we started to make some progress there. We thought, it was possible we may be able to source it there quicker. It turns out that they wanted to go through a 3-month process in respect to that. And thankfully, the MHRA has now come through. They have now approved. Approved the 5 to 11 shot. But of course, they have a two-stage process. In the UK, they have the regulatory agency, which is MHRA. Then they also have the Joint Vaccine something initiative. I think I can't remember the full name of it, but it's either called the JCVI or the JVCI.
Mm-hmm.
I keep getting that acronym mixed up, but basically, it is the body which then says, yes, this is what we're going to recommend you do in terms of vaccines, and that is the body. So the science approval is the MHRA, but the science and political equation is dealt with through the JVCI. I'm gonna look it up while we talk, make sure I get the acronym right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the body that decides whether we're able to do this. They have now recommended that that the children who are 5 to 11 and who have vulnerabilities in the UK, those children can have the Pfizer vaccine. Sorry, I was just anyway getting distracted trying to look this thing up. So they have said that they can have the vaccine. We have effectively gone back and said, well, we'd like to be able to get this and to utilize it for or provide this option to our families here who would like to have their kids vaccinated. So we are waiting on the finalization of that. I expect that we will be able to move forward fairly shortly in relation to that. So it is good news, subject to getting those finer details resolved. And I think every day I probably have 2 or 3 or 4 emails or messages from parents who are asking about that. And I think the good news for them is we are right on the cusp of being able to proceed with that. And that is, I think, for a lot of them, they're going to regard that as a nice Christmas present. Now I can't hear you.
Sorry. I was coughing early and I muted myself. My apologies.
Okay.
All right. So we've got Richie joining us. He said, good evening from Celine and I. Merry Christmas to the Premier. Thank you, Mr. Richie.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Bruce says, why are executives and government authorities, agencies, and departments allowed to remain in their positions if they're consistently unable and or unwilling to produce accurate and timely financial statements?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not trying to duck the issue at all, but this is this is a matter for the for the governor and the deputy governor to basically address with the civil service and to some extent the wider public service. Although we do appoint the board members on the wider public service statutory authorities. So to that extent, we as the politicians, we have to ensure that the board is doing their job, and the board is then holding their staff accountable. Let me say that I was a minister between 2013 and 2017, and I've now come back into government as of April of this year. A lot of progress has been made in the last 8 or 9 years now, probably 8 years, let's say. A lot of progress has been made. So a lot of the authorities, a lot of the departments, a lot of the ministries, and I don't remember the exact number. I might get a message from the Deputy Premier telling me if he can remember, but I want to say it's probably 85 to 90% of the various component units of government's financing unit that are in compliance with their requirements, their filing of their of the statutory audits. I think sometimes they're delayed in filing the actual reports. So I'm trying to make sure that we deal with that and we keep that up to date as well. But the big question is always going to be: are the ministries, are the departments, are the statutory authorities getting clean audits, clean financial audits, so that when the people of the country look at the financial statements of each of these entities, that they show a true and fair view of the financial position, the way the money has been spent, the issues that relate to those entities from an accounting perspective. So, the financial statements will have notes which explain various issues. The big question is going to be: are there any qualifications to those financial statements? And thankfully, we have the vast majority of them have all clean, unqualified financial statements. Now, there are a couple that have some issues which are lingering issues, which are quite difficult to resolve in a very short time span. And when I say short, I'm talking about that may include a period which is years. And as a result, government on a consolidated basis doesn't have a full, clean opinion. But I think we have gotten to the point where it really does, and it should give people confidence that they can look at those financial statements, they can understand, even to the extent that there are qualifications, they can understand what those qualifications are and why they are there. So people can have confidence in those statements in understanding the financial picture that they paint for the operations of government. So, it's as I said, for the core civil service, that is it is largely an issue for the deputy governor and the governor to address if there are any individuals who are not up to par in terms of performance. We constitutionally, the elected arm of government, are not involved with that, cannot be involved with that. But in relation to the statutory authorities, of course, we can select board members. The board members are then able to hire and fire staff members for the statutory authorities. So indirectly through those board members, we can hold the statutory authorities accountable and ensure that they have their financial statements and they get their audits up to date and in a good and proper state with unqualified opinions. And I can't tell you with 100% certainty, but I believe, subject to correction, I believe they all of the statutory authorities are in good standing in that respect.
So just for Bruce's benefit, I did send that message to the Deputy Premier as well. And one thing I must say about Frans Manderson is he responds, quickly if he can. And he has clarified that this is actually old news.
Send it to the Deputy Premier or the Deputy Governor?
Sorry, Deputy Governor. My apologies.
Okay. All
right. He says that this is old news and that every civil service entity has clean records. So Bruce, hopefully that's helpful information. Let's move on to the next question. So we've got Amy who says, are there any thoughts on shortening the isolation period for unvaccinated or in particular children? Just concerned that the new isolation requirements with Omicron means a whole family needs to isolate if there's one Omicron positive, which again would be detrimental to learning for our children. In the UK, it's been reduced to 7 days.
So Amy, we have discussions along these lines just about every day, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. The information around Omicron is changing by the day, if not by the hour. We're learning lots of things about it, and of course, we're not in a position here where we can do much in the way of our own studies and assessments. I suppose down the road we can look back and draw some conclusions about our experience, but we look at what's happening in all of the European countries, the US, Canada, South Africa, everywhere that are publishing their results and publishing their analysis of the impacts of this and the various medical parameters around it. So we're learning from, of course, through the WHO as well, the World Health Organization. So we're learning a lot from what is happening in other countries and other places. But remember, this new variant was identified, was it the 24th or the 27th of November? Right? So less than a month ago, right? Less than a month ago. And it has now gone around the world. And it obviously has reached us here in Cayman. So there are still things that are being learned about it. At this point, we're taking a conservative approach based on the advice that we have from our chief medical officer, our public health officials, the medical officer of health as well. So we're taking their advice, and we are taking a conservative position initially because we're a small island. We can't really count on anybody coming to our aid and driving across the border and helping us, or we can't count on us being able to put somebody on an air ambulance and send them up to Florida. So we need to make sure that what we're doing and the approach that we're taking is relatively sure to have as predictable an outcome as possible. So the public health officials at this point have been taking the position that they would require this 14-day isolation period, and they would require everyone who was a contact to be in isolation. I suspect that will change going forward. I suspect that we will. Let me put it this way: it may well be that we will have some form of reimposition of the existing lateral flow test policy, the national lateral flow test policy that was in place over the last 3 months. We may have something like that back in effect. I'm not sure about the timing of the days, but it may well be that. Now, I know that the UK are moving to shorten some of the time frames. We we are taking a slightly more conservative approach in respect to that. We may be moving in that direction, but we want to see a bit more evidence before we make that decision because of the potential consequences for us here in Cayman. Now, yes, we have a lot of healthcare facilities, a lot of very high quality healthcare facilities, and as many people will note, we do have on a per capita basis a lot of hospital beds and a lot of capacity to handle COVID. The problem is we don't know what we don't know in relation to Omicron, and there is a range of information out there suggesting that it is extremely transmissible and it may cause a spike, a significant spike in infections, and that may translate into a significant increase in hospitalizations. We don't know exactly what that will look like. The UK has, and even the US, they have used terms like tsunami, tidal wave. All of these things are designed to suggest a very high level of infection. And in fact, some countries are already setting records for infection levels compared to what they experienced back in 2020. So for us, we have to try to err on the side of caution. So all of these things are still in discussion. We may end up doing similar things, but it just may be a week or two behind, maybe a little bit more than that. We just need to know exactly what the likely impact of this of our actions are, because we're concerned to make sure that we don't make a mistake and end up with an avalanche of people going into hospitals, or even to be honest, a level of infection that has a major impact on our ability for people to function normally. The really good thing at this point is that we have schools out, but the week after the New Year is when schools, I think, are supposed to go back in, and we need to bear that in mind. If we can maintain and control the level of local transmission prior to that happening, then I think we have a better opportunity to have a good outcome and be able to control it better. So for us, we just need to listen to the science and take a bit of a conservative approach. I can appreciate. I have a lot of the concerns put to me by parents, by people who have children, people who are traveling or want to travel. So I understand all the various factors, but I just want people to understand where we come from with our perspective of just trying to be a little bit cautious, because it's better to be safe than sorry.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We have Claire, who is asking, is it true that the new CMO's main goal is to bring Cayman to 100% injection rate like she helped to achieve in Gibraltar? Did she do that in Gibraltar? That's news to me.
She was in Gibraltar. I don't think she was in Gibraltar for the whole time. But I'm not
she
sure.
was there, I think, just over the summer months.
Yeah, she was there for a period. No, I mean that's not what her remit is. Would all of us like to have as many people in the country as can be vaccinated without having a medical problem, without having an allergic reaction? Yes, we would, because that is going to provide the best possible outcome for us in the country and provide the highest level of protection and safety for the country. But that is not why she's here. She's here to fill the shoes, to bring her own stamp to the chief medical officer's role that Dr. John Lee has just vacated. And she was actually here. I think, Sandy, you will know that she was here in
Mm-hmm.
March of last year. And of course, lockdown in Cayman occurred. It was March 22nd last year, as I remember.
Right.
So she was here giving advice to the government at that time. She's obviously a very experienced person who works in epidemiology, works for the UK Health Security, or what used to be Public Health England, now the
Mm-hmm.
UK Health Security Agency. And we're lucky to have someone of her caliber of experience and knowledge to assist us at this point.
And it's interesting. I was just having a quick look about Gibraltar's vaccination rate. So it's referred to as the most vaccinated place in the world. And despite that, they have still canceled official Christmas celebrations and tightened COVID restrictions over the festive period following a spike in cases.
Yes.
So, it's one of those things, folks, as the Premier said earlier, it's not 100%, it's not a guarantee. You've got to take other measures such as social distancing, mask wearing, hand sanitizing, staying out of crowded areas, really, as well.
So the explanation that I have been given in relation to Gibraltar is that Gibraltar was one of the first territories that rolled out their vaccine campaign. And they did that very early in the year, in January. And of course, they have a smaller population than Cayman, and they had a really accelerated program. So they got a lot of their people vaccinated quickly. As a result, they went for quite some time. Let's say 8 months, 7-8 months, having people double vaccinated. And it's an indisputable fact as well that the antibody level begins to drop after somewhere around 6 or 7 or 6 months, let's say. So that, I think, gave rise to a potential where they had a significant spike in infections. In addition, of course, Gibraltar is quite unique in that, in a number of ways, but obviously one of the ways is that it has a land bridge connection to Spain, and there are 10,000 Spanish workers that come across the border into Gibraltar every day. So the possibility or the potential for interaction and the importation of one of the old variants or the new variants, Delta, Omicron, it all exists there on a daily basis. So overall, I think the reason they had a spike in infections was apparently the waning protection from the vaccine.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but for as long as we have COVID going on, we may have to have some sort of annual sort of top up on it. We don't know yet. The experience that people that has been noted with the third shot, the booster, is that it really ramps up your immune system, and something like I forget how many percentage, but hundreds of percentages that it ramps up your antibodies, and that I think is going to be very helpful generally for whatever variant, but certainly it's been shown that it's important to provide some degree of protection in relation to Omicron. And perhaps I think I've heard that Israel is now giving or proposing to do fourth shots. Look, here's the reality. There are some vaccines, there are some diseases, and we've even in our lifetimes, we've had vaccines as children where we've had to take 4 or 5 shots over the first 4 or 5 years of our lives, and that's just the reality. It may be that turns out to be the case. It may be that the third shot is the ticket. It may be that the fourth shot is the ticket. It really, puts you in the best possible position. We don't really know at this point. But what we do know is that the vaccines work. And what we do know is that the UK have provided us with a steady supply of these vaccines, and they haven't cost the country a cent. And we should be very grateful because it has really helped us. If you look at some of our sister territories, if you look at Bermuda, for example, they've had a case level of somewhere around, I don't know, let's call it 6,000. I'm not sure whether it's a little bit less or a little bit more. But they've had a death rate of somewhere in excess of 100. Cayman has already surpassed Bermuda in terms of the infection rate.
Right.
But we're still at 10 or 11 deaths.
So we had two more, just to update people, we had 2 more deaths reported yesterday, so we are at 11 now.
Yes, unfortunately.
And in case people are interested, I thought this was a very interesting graph as it relates to vaccination details. So this shows folks, by geographical location. We've got Greenland, first and second vaccinations. And look at Cayman, little Cayman, all the way at the top of this list. I think their numbers are a little bit higher than what we're officially reporting, but nonetheless, we're like in the top, 6 countries in terms of vaccination numbers. Yeah. So they have us right under Cuba, United Arab Emirates, Maldives, Gibraltar, Greenland. There was some other country, I can't remember, was it Brunei? But there was a smaller country as well that basically their government literally went door to door. It's a mountainous country somewhere in Asia, I think, but they literally went door to door and just started vaccinating everyone. It wasn't really optional. So, and I often remind people in this program, because I think, again, in our lifetime, we are not old enough to remember any of this, but the polio vaccine in the US was one of those that literally they went door to door, knocked on your door, you open the door, they inoculated you, and they moved on to your neighbor. And it was as simple as that. This wasn't you need to sign a consent form. Let's talk about, your options. They were just like, we need to get this done because it was such a serious public health concern at the time. So I think, it's interesting how people's opinions have changed. I've said time and time again, historically, when we look at the scientific data, this is the safest in terms of medicine, the most, sort of checks and balances in place. You've got the CDC. All these agencies around the world who keep an eye on manufacturers of any sort of vaccines, more so than ever before. And of course, we've got all the Facebook and Instagram doctors out there as well. So everyone is keeping an eye on the process. And it still kind of baffles me to think that people could still question and want to believe that something else is going on than what is obviously happening. So
it is interesting, the thought process that people engage in this on this whole issue. When you think about it, there are people that they'll go and take 2 Aleve, 2 Tylenol, 2 Panadol, 2 of any kind of drug that if they have a pain, they just pop it in. They don't look at the ingredients. Most of the time, they don't even look at the instructions properly. They just say, I think 2 will work, right? But when it comes to something like this, it's, I don't understand it, and I need to know everything about it, and I don't trust the authorities. I don't trust the regulator. I think we're way beyond that now. We're into 2 solid years, nearly 2 solid years of this pandemic, and we are way beyond questioning whether the regulators did their job properly, whether the medical industry did their job properly. Yes, there are times in our history where we have had reason to question the question the big drug companies. But this to me is not one of those times. This is when you have not just a national crisis, but a regional crisis and an international crisis. That's why it's called a pandemic. It's all over the world. And we have to accept that we have a part to play in this. We all do. Because as long as there's one country somewhere or a group of countries somewhere that has a big deposit of this virus, that because the world travels so much, that will constantly be released into the world, and we're going to keep having this problem. The solution to addressing this pandemic is for us to get a significant proportion, let's say 60 to 70% of the whole world vaccinated, so that we build this vaccine wall around the virus, and it starts to shut down its ability to transmit.
And interestingly enough, just 2 days ago, U.S. citizens were warned not to travel to Spain or Gibraltar for that. Again, I think they're averaging about 66 cases a day right now. So Bruce is saying, what's the status of, oh, sorry, I think I'm missing a question by Bruce. 1 second here. So does being vaccinated make you less likely to get infected with the virus, as some infected people are asymptomatic and might never actually seek medical care? How is that actually measured? So maybe I can help out the Premier here, because this is a question that our experts have answered. So again, we always try to rely on the experts where possible. I don't have the infograph in front of me, but I know that we have, sorry, Bruce, we've actually shared this before on the morning program. There is a graph that shows you all the data in terms of, there's like 4 different levels of protection. So you're less likely to get it. I think for that particular one, it's 5 times less likely to actually get the virus if you're vaccinated. You're less likely to transmit it to other people if you do get it. You're less likely to be hospitalized. And each one goes up by like the level of protection. And in terms of death, you're obviously less likely to die as well. I'll see if I can stick that. I'm pretty sure we shared that on the page before, Bruce. If I can find it again, I'll certainly be happy to share that. Let's move through some more questions. Again, folks, if you're just tuning into the program, we have about 130 people on at the moment. Thank you so much. So this is Premier Access with Premier Wayne Panton, here to answer your questions. Let me see. We've got Ms. Lily, who says, Mr. Premier, any thoughts? Introduce the first 2 days of isolation until negative PCR LFT, as per England's regulations now. This will reduce the community spread of COVID and or Omicron. Okay, so first 2 days of isolation until you get a negative PCR LFT, but you have to come in with a negative test within 24 hours now.
Sorry, I can't. I'm not seeing the question. So.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's asking any thoughts of introducing a 2-day isolation period until they can produce a negative test on island.
Right. So, I'm to be honest, I'm not sure what the UK's current regulations are, but I do know that they had moved to the last time I was there, which was early November. Beginning of November, they required a day 2 PCR test. So that seems to be the same thing that is being described there, but it didn't require isolation if you were not coming, or unless you were coming from a country on the red list, in which case you would require to be quarantined. So my understanding now is that they're requiring you to come in with a clean PCR, and then I think on day 2. So that it may be right that you have to isolate until day 2, until you clear the day 2 PCR or LFT. I'm not certain about it. We are discussing the possibility of introducing lateral flow test on arrival. So that is something that's under discussion. Obviously, on a daily basis, we may have multiple different discussions depending on how things are developing and the direction different trends are going in different parts of the world, and the advice that we're being given, and that's being shared with us. So at this point, based on all the advice that we're being given, we are considering having an on arrival test in addition to the pre-flight test. We are considering also changing the shifting around the timing of the lateral flow tests that we currently have. We currently have a day 2, a day 5, and a day 10. We're considering making some changes to that, and I put it no higher than that because, as I say, we consider various things all the time, and if I told you everything we talked about, you would be confused when you see the final thing come out and reflected in the regulations. You might say, "Well, he said this last week." That's why we don't talk much about the things we're considering, but this is one of the things I think that is a possibility. We may well be going to doing on arrival lateral flow tests. PCR is not going to be possible because it's not quick enough, but lateral flow tests are feasible on arrival. So that's something that is being considered.
All right. So Miss Margaret is asking about the vaccine for the kids. So just FYI, that was asked and answered earlier in the program. So go ahead and hit that rewind button. Kimar says, if you're vaccinated, I'm not, what is it that you're afraid of when the vaccine you take is to protect you?
Because, Kimar, I care about you. I want you to be safe as well. And the bottom line is that if I'm vaccinated, I am less likely to be infected, although I can be infected, quite obviously. But you are much more likely to get infected, and you are then much more likely to be able to transmit it and be a part of the chain of transmitting it than I am. So if you're vaccinated and I'm vaccinated, we're both safer in terms of having some degree of resistance, not 100% certainty, but some degree of resistance to being infected. And then we're also less likely to transmit it to a significant number of people because the fact is we are, as vaccinated people, we are generally sick for a shorter period of time or infectious for a shorter period of time. So if you are not vaccinated, you may be able, for example, to be infectious for 10 days straight. If I'm vaccinated, I may be infectious for 7 days, but that means I've only got 7 days to infect people if I'm out and don't know it. Whereas you've got 10 days where you can be out and infecting people. And if we're each infecting 3 or 4 people a day, that means that you've infected 9 or 15 people more than I have, or 16 people. So that's just part of the equation. That's one of the reasons why, in terms of an infection and controlling the chain of transmission. But for you, it makes it far less likely that you're going to get very, very ill, and it makes it far less likely that you are going to end up getting ill to the point that you may pass away. So you're going to have less strain on your hospital facilities. You're going to have less strain and worry and concern on your families. And then, if you avoid death because of it, then obviously your family is not going to suffer that grief. Trust me, that's worth a hell of a lot. So, you then become a part of the solution for the whole country. It's not just a question of, leave me alone. I'm unvaccinated and you're vaccinated and we're all good. No, if you're unvaccinated, you end up being at greater risk yourself and being a greater risk to other people for a longer period of time. That's just the reality of it. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have less value than I have. It just means that you are you because you're unvaccinated, you have those attributes, and that's a choice that you have to make. You need to think about that to decide whether or not you like that equation. For me, I decided that I needed to make sure that the people around me were protected, and that I had less chance of getting ill.
Mm-hmm.
I had less chance of getting ill, and I feel like I'm trying to do my part to help people. Not just a question of me not liking being ill and trying to avoid symptoms of the flu or
Mm-hmm.
symptoms of pneumonia. God knows I certainly don't want that. Never had it and don't really want to try it.
Mm.
But it is more than just a personal thing. It is a collective, and it is us all being part of one society and one community, and caring and loving and looking after each other.
And Kimar also wants to know, can he enter the Caymans without being vaccinated? Woohoo! Kimar, I think Works might be looking at your name now.
Kimar, if you are Caymanian, yes, you can. If you are otherwise a legal resident, yes, you can. If you are not any of those things, and you don't own a business, and you don't own property here, and not a connected person, then I'm sorry, you can't come.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get vaccinated.
And I think
We'd love to welcome you, but you got to be vaccinated if you're not Caymanian or any of those other qualifying factors.
And I think one of the interesting things about Kimar's point that, when people say to you, your decision to not get vaccinated is a selfish one. It's not that they're trying to be rude or anything, but, we all live in communities, right? And I know the Premier's motto for his entire campaign, and even it continues, is communities build country. And it really is understanding that at the smaller levels, at the microcosm, you get things right, it's going to spread out and really help to build up the entire country as a whole. When you have issues and fragmentations within the healthcare system, for example, because they are overwhelmed by the number of, COVID patients in the hospital, people being in ventilators, people being sick, driving up the cost of healthcare for every one of us. Because if you think that there isn't a financial knock-on effect as well, because of what's happening. Just yesterday, we were hearing that not in Cayman yet, but it's coming, and other places in the Caribbean, they have actually already started to refuse to pay out death benefits for people who have decided to remain unvaccinated. Yeah. And, imagine now you live in Trinidad, for example. The insurance company says, you know what, you wouldn't go to the hospital when you were sick. You knew you were COVID positive. Now you've died. We're not going to pay out your health insurance policy. Your family has no money to pay to bury you, and they get nothing to help pay off mortgages or any other debt that you may have had. All of those things fall on the communities, the governments, the other people that have to pick up the slack and then try to help you. So
your family.
I think the bottom line is you have a choice, but your choice comes with consequences. And the consequences, I think, are becoming more and more evident as we, are going through this process. So Dacia, good evening. She says, good night, Sandy. Can you please ask the Premier if there are any laws being put in place to avoid Caymanians losing their jobs due to them not being vaccinated and contracting COVID?
Well, no is the short answer. We are not putting laws in place which would protect employers from acting reasonably, where they are in a position that they are concerned about the health and safety of their staff, and the health and safety of their customers. If they act reasonably and they say to their employees, we need you to prove to us that you're not sick, and that in some cases you are vaccinated, then those are not unreasonable positions to take.
Mm-hmm.
And the government is not here to help protect you from everything in life. There are consequences to actions, consequences to decisions. Um, if you are, if their employer is saying, we want you to get vaccinated, or want you to prove to us that you're not sick within a regular schedule, then you're going to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It is not reasonable to expect your employer to, because you decide you don't want to do something on a principle. It's not, I mean, obviously, if you have a medical reason for it, if you have a doctor's certificate saying, I can't take this vaccine because I'm really allergic to certain ingredients or something along those lines, and I'll go into anaphylactic shock and I'll die, then that's a whole different thing. But
Mm-hmm.
short of something like that, short of a situation where you legitimately don't have a medical reason for refusing it, you're not being reasonable in your position of saying, to hell with everybody else, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. And Darcy, I'm going to share an article from Forbes.com that talks about it in the US context. And it actually says that not only can your employer fire you for that very reason, but you will also unlikely be able to collect any employment benefits from the government. And there's another interesting article that just came out December the 9th that talks about, this is from the SHRM, so this is Human Resources Professionals, about employers who are reacting to workers who refuse to get vaccinated. And of course, it talks about the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has basically said that an employer can fire you for not getting vaccinated, and it doesn't go against any federal anti-discrimination laws. You know, there's been a couple lawsuits that have come out, and even the U.S. Supreme Court the other day refused to stop the federal government from mandating it for federal workers. And again, you know, the only question seems to be if they can accommodate certain things, like if you have a bona fide medical reason why you can't do it or some sort of religious accommodation, then those are the things that will happen. But in terms of them mandating it, and we've seen it all across the US, and I think even in the UK, especially in the coming year, is going to be doing it for certain categories of workers as well. It appears that it will be a done deal where the employers, private employers, will be mandating it. Trinidad just did that, I think, a couple of days ago, earlier this week, where they have mandated it for all civil servants. So you get vaccinated or you won't get paid. Mr. Bruce, I see a lot of questions coming in from you. We do want to give some other people an opportunity. Just one last question from Bruce then. He's asking about the Doctors Express fiasco being resolved, and what is the extent of the liability to the government? Do we have any updates on that situation, or is that still being negotiated?
I don't know. It's still, there is still potential litigation there. Obviously, I can't comment on that. But
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have any information that I could share at this point anyway.
Right. So everything 345 says, are we getting New Year's Eve? So
Well, New
obviously,
Year's Eve is going to come.
yeah.
You know, I can't promise you that we will not have a quiet New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
But I can promise you that we will do everything we can for you to have a safe New Year's Eve, so that you have the opportunity of all the promise of a new year and everything that brings for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the one thing that drives me. I can deal with people saying, I'm angry with you, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like the public health advice, I don't like the medical advice. I can deal with all that if you're alive 6 months from now or 12 months from now, and you could then tell me, look, I really disagree with you, I still disagree with you, still don't like you. Or you can look back in hindsight and you can say, I disagree with you, but thank you. Or
Mm-hmm.
now I agree with you, but thank you. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The most important thing to me is the safety of people. I want to make sure that we can get people to that future point where we have a better chance of working through this and putting this in the past as much as possible. And we can do this. I mean, we have gone through different iterations over the last nearly 2 years now, and we have survived it. It was a lot of unknowns at first. It has been difficult to manage. Then we're in that spot where there was a lot of comfort. There was a lot of promise. You know, the vaccines brought a lot of promise. But then the reality was obvious then, that the vaccines were never going to prevent 100% of infections. So we're still going to have a situation that we have to manage. But the world is going to continue to have to manage this. But I believe it's going to get better. I believe in the future of mankind and its ability to work through these types of problems. And it might take us a while, but we're going to learn what we have to do. Just like we're going to learn what we have to do to address the climate change issues that are ongoing as well. Because to be honest, the climate change issues are more existential overall for mankind than the current pandemic situation is. It is going to pale in comparison if we don't address those issues going forward. I understand fully people's desire and interest in making sure that we can resolve our current healthcare scenarios and get back to a point where life is more normal and comfortable. But you know, we have to sometimes just make adjustments. And this is one of those times that we have to make those adjustments. We know what we have to do in order to stay safe. This virus is, by and large, it is a respiratory disease. And our main thing is making sure that we wear our masks indoors, wear good masks indoors, especially when you're around other people. If you're outdoors and you can stay socially distant from others, you're probably fine. You know, you probably don't have to wear a mask if you're socially distant. But if you are uncomfortable, if you can't social distance outside, then wear your mask. It is not that bad. It is not the end of the world. I've been chuckling to myself watching people develop these things into into parts of like the fashion kit that everybody has. You know, and some of the masks make statements, and you know, I have one here that has the you can see it here. It has the coat of arms, and it has my ministry name on it.
Yes.
So, you know, we invest in these things because we know we're going to need them for some time to come. We just have to make some adjustments, and you know, we can all get there. We can all make the adjustments, but one of those is just making sure that we get vaccinated and get boosted. That's going to make a big difference for us.
All right. KT Matos says, can you please ask what happened to the traveler who was coming in for their day 2, 5, and 10 LFT and have been standing or sitting next to a traveler for 30 plus minutes who then test positive?
Well, if you're standing or sitting next to a traveler and you are wearing your mask, chances are you're probably going to be fine.
And standing 6 feet away, social distancing.
Yeah, well, I mean, if the truth is, if you can't social distance, you should be wearing good masks. And by the way, don't wear those cloth masks. Don't wear those thin masks. If you're wearing a mask that feels really, really comfortable and you think, I don't even realize that I'm wearing a mask, that mask isn't effective. You know, anything that's effective is not going to necessarily be the most comfortable thing all the time. So wear a good mask. And if you are close to somebody, even if they're positive and you're wearing a good mask, chances are let's just put it this way, you have a reasonably good chance of not getting infected. If you are waiting in line to do these things, then I think you should, you should make sure you stand. You can social distance yourself. You can stand back.
Mm.
You know how it happens. If somebody stands close to you and you step back, the person behind you is probably going to step back a bit, and then everybody ends up making some adjustments. But wear your mask. That's one of the most important things. And wear a good mask.
All right. So Philip, thank you for your comment. Karen and Rachel both have the same comment about the kids, which was answered earlier in the program. Cameron wants to know about the cruise ship. So we do have a cruise ship that is coming next week, Tuesday, to our shores. That cruise ship is still scheduled to come?
No.
Oh, okay. That's breaking news here, folks.
The circumstances have changed in relation to this cruise ship situation. Obviously, a lot of circumstances are constantly evolving, and unfortunately, I have a colleague who I used an expression once, saying that circumstances have conspired against us. So my colleague often says to me, "How can circumstances conspire?"
Right.
The truth is, this is one of these scenarios where circumstances conspire against you, and the situation changes. There are a variety of issues that present themselves, and you realize it's probably not the best thing for this to continue. The risk profile and the circumstances and the potential benefit that you thought was going to happen look likely or less likely to materialize, and the risk profile looks likely to shift against you. So we have taken the position that we're not going to proceed with this cruise ship visit. Unfortunately, it will have some impact on some folks, but I think by and large, most people probably feel that it wasn't the right time. It wouldn't be the right time, and it really reflects sort of mixed messaging to allow that to continue on the 28th.
All right, folks. So you heard it here first on Premier Access. That's why you got to listen to the program. Everything through. I think we answered that already. Good night to Miss Andrea. She sends her greetings to the Honorable Premier.
Hello, Andrea.
KT says, I just got back from Florida and I feel more at risk when I go to these testing centers. Well, hopefully you can, some of them are still doing by appointment. So I suppose you could try to pick an appointment time when, maybe only you were available, or, you're the only person there. I'm not really too sure. Bruce, we'll come back to some of your questions. You've had a few already that have been answered. Philip wants to know, has any thought been put into having a shorter cutoff date for current work permit holders for vaccination instead of at the end of their work permit, as some of them could be 3 years or more out? Further, can the Premier ask the Deputy Governor when he'll be mandating the civil service, particularly frontline workers, to be vaccinated?
I'm trying to sort out the question, the first limb of the question. So I think what Mr. Wood is saying is, if you have if a person has a current work permit, which is, let's say, 3 or 4 years, bless you, it's 3 or 4 years in duration, that would mean that they wouldn't have to renew it until then, and their vaccination doesn't come due until then. I think the good thing, Mr. Wood, is that the vast majority of work permits, and I don't know the exact statistics, but I would imagine it is 90+% of the work permits in existence are less than 3 years, and probably on the order of 1 to 2 years. So I think we're going to have, and we have had a lot of people who have taken up the vaccination. Interestingly, I'm aware of some people who have decided that they were not going to continue working in Cayman and they would leave. I'm assuming they didn't go through the U.S. Otherwise, they wouldn't needed to be vaccinated. But on the second limb, Sandy, can you put it back up again?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. It's basically mandating it for civil servants.
Yeah, the frontline issue. I think the position is that the deputy governor is proceeding with requiring contract workers, new contract workers and renewals of contract workers to be vaccinated. I don't know if it's actually in effect yet, but they are proceeding on that basis. In relation to Caymanians on the front line, unfortunately, the government's position is, so the civil service, the head of the civil services position, so the governor and the deputy governor's position is they don't want to do anything that the government doesn't support in terms of requiring people to be mandated. And at this point in time, the government's collective position is that we are not going to effectively have a policy of mandating the vaccine for Caymanians. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to beg people to get it done, because I do that every chance I get. So that's the long answer to that question. But I think we will see some action and some movement, I should say, fairly soon in terms of contract workers in the civil service.
All right, we have a few different questions here. So Tahira Enriquez says, good night, Sandy. What about the people that are working and unable to pay rent and other bills and have NAU assistance? Landlords don't want NAU or kids. What is the government going to do to help? Can you ask?
Well, that is a challenge that we recognize. We have a situation here where property values have been going up because of a lot of factors, including the reality that anybody can just come in and buy a property. Cayman is viewed as a very good place to buy property, to own property, and it drives up the property values. We're not making any more of Cayman, so if the demand increases, the supply doesn't necessarily increase at all or as quickly in terms of developed property. So those prices start to go up, and that drives rents up. Unfortunately, I'm going to be very honest here. We also have a lot of people who are mercenaries when it comes to renting properties to people who don't have the same opportunities that others may have. And I find it reprehensible. If I was a property owner and I was renting to somebody, I am going to try to make sure that my property is in a good condition, that it's someplace that I would let one of my family members rent and stay in. If that's the kind of quality I want them to have. I want them to care about their tenants. Of course, they're entitled to make a fair return, no question about that. But I've seen a lot of landlords or property owners that are very unkind, very mean-spirited when it comes to dealing with issues with their tenants, and also taking positions that they don't want to rent to NAU tenants. Now, having said that, let's also face some other facts. We have some of our own people who are not reasonable, are not responsible when it comes to other people's property either. And they will sometimes cause a lot of damage to those properties. So in some cases, the actions of landlords are based on some unfortunate experiences. But I don't think it's fair, and to just apply that to everybody and say that every person who is in a position where they need assistance and they have NAU helping them is going to take the same approach that the last person down the block did, and caused a lot of damage when they eventually left. We have to be better than that as a society. We have to care about each other. We have to respect each other. We have to respect each other's rights. I think tenants have an obligation to respect their landlord's property. Landlords, on the other hand, have an obligation to respect the rights of tenants to have to enjoy the property that they rent, in peace and quiet, to not be harassed, and to be treated fairly. So I'm very sympathetic to situations where there is abuse on either side, and it's unfortunate but sometimes you find situations or examples where both sides are clearly justified in their perspective. I think the majority of the time, probably, and I'm going to go with the human side of me, the person that cares about other people. I think I'm going to go with the people who are down, who need assistance, who need help, and who are going to stand up and say, I'm going to help these people. I'm going to give them a nice place that they can live in. And I think if we show goodness to people, they will show goodness and respect back. That's the way I think society works. That's the way I think we work as people. And I think if we're in this cycle all the time where we're expecting the worst from each other, then we're going to get the worst from each other.
True. I agree. Claire says the problem is NAU delayed payments deter the landlords to accept such applicants. I don't think, Claire, that's quite the primary reason anymore, and I'll tell you why, and I'll give you a perfect example of this. NAU now has direct payments going to landlords' bank accounts, which before, part of the delay was, doing the check requisition and then that taking a while and so forth. So now it can be done. I mean, your payments can be done in a timely fashion because it's done online. So government has really, if you're a vendor, which landlords would be, I think they've really shaped up quite a bit in terms of online payments being available. But let me just say one thing, because this is something interesting that you guys will have to know. The Premier was just talking about how some landlords are not always the best landlords in the world. And so they go around cussing NAU about their payments, and, they treat tenants really, really poorly. There was an incident with one particular landlord. You guys might remember this. I'm not going to call her name, but once I tell you the scenario, you'll know exactly who it is. We had complaints at her property. We showed up there. This was years ago. Speaking to the tenants, they were saying, listen, she's cutting off, our electricity. We don't have water. One lady had a 2-week-old baby, and she was having to sit in her car because it was so hot in the apartment, because the landlord was penalizing. She has an entire tenancy yard full of NAU clients, making thousands of dollars a month off of NAU, like really good money when you think about it. And, one person was late resubmitting their paperwork. So she didn't get a payment for that one person. She cuts everybody off, because she's got them on shared meters. It was just really a crazy situation. So, she kind of came in a huff and a puff. Oh, you've got to turn your cameras off. And then when we were off record, I said, I'm a Georgetowner. You're a Georgetowner. We know each other. Tell me what's the situation here? What's your side of the story? She claimed that she had applied for this. She was also saying, oh, I can't get a payment on time, blah, blah, blah. And she claims that she had applied to have the direct deposit done, and she didn't hear back from NAU. And I said, well, that's not good. I said, okay, well, I'm going to chase this up for you because, we want to know what's going on. Well, lo and behold, this is what I tell y'all, you don't need to lie when it comes to, dealing with CMR, because we always get the truth. Lo and behold, what actually happened was she was in arrears with her own mortgage and NAU cannot, for whatever reasons, I don't know if it's something with the bank and whatever, but they could not actually accept her as a landlord who was eligible for the direct deposit because she was actually in arrears with her mortgage. So she was one of those people who'd have to still pick up a traditional check. And I thought to myself, why would she lie about something like that? So just a word to the wise there, Claire. Sometimes things are not as obvious as you think when it comes to some of the situations that people will find themselves in on both sides of the spectrum. Because I've seen landlords from hell, and I've also seen tenants from hell who will destroy people's properties. They deal drugs out of rental properties, prostitution. They're just real terrors on wheels, and they feel like when they go in there that the landlord can never evict them. So I think there's a lot of reasons why landlords are very, very cautious, especially good landlords are cautious about dealing with NAU clients, because there has been this unfortunate reputation that some of them have created for everyone. It's the bad apple syndrome, right? You got one bad apple, it's going to spoil the entire basket.
I want to also say, Sandra, that in the past, government has dealt with a lot of small businesses, supported a lot of small businesses, and to be honest, they haven't been the fairest to a lot of the small businesses as well. So many times in the past, we've had situations where small businesses end up having to carry a lot of accounts receivable, which they shouldn't really have to be carrying. And it's the same kind of situation with NAU and with some of the landlords. We want to make sure that government is paying people as quickly as they should be and paying them in a reasonable period of time. And I want to say, in relation to my colleague, Minister Andre Ebanks, who is in charge of social development, investment, social development, innovation, investment, social development. And he in particular has a vision for changing the way we do things in relation to social development, in relation to the services that we provide to the people of our country who are in a situation where they need support. So we are going to be supporting him. We're going to be moving forward with a lot of plans to change how we address a lot of these issues and try to make sure that there's less of this perception out there with, for example, landlords who are saying, well, I don't want to rent to these people because NAU doesn't pay on time. That happens sometimes. And it has happened perhaps more often than it should happen in the past, but we are going to change things. We're going to make things better through technology and through a different approach, because we want to reimagine how we deliver services to the people in this country who need those services. And that means we're also going to make sure that they actually do need those services, and they're people who are young and healthy, who can get back out there, join the workforce, be a productive part of society. We're going to be supporting them to do that as well. But we know that there are elements of our society who, through no fault of their own, need our assistance, need our help. And we want to be there to help them in the most efficient, most effective way possible. That's our, I have a ministerial colleague there. He is passionate about making a difference. Just as I am passionate about making a difference in the lives of our people, he's passionate about reimagining how we do that to make a difference in the lives of the people who need our assistance going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Some persons are thankful for the program this evening. I see a number of comments. Andrea says, this is so true, Honorable Premier, about landlords. Natalisha, I believe that's how that's pronounced, says, can we have a drive-through PCR testing option like in the BRAC? I think Doctors Hospital does drive-through, and I'm not sure about Health City, but that might be a possibility as well. So there are some options here for that, Natalisha. Lily says, thank you for taking your time to answer a question, specifically mine. She's in the UK, so she says, good morning.
Yeah, all right.
Andrea says, K-Mankind Spirit needs to be
Morning.
shown more. I saw Dacia also saying that she was enjoying the conversation and learning. Oh, Troy. Yes, Troy says, when can we expect an update regarding moving to phase 5 of reopening?
Well, Troy, I think you know that this is something that we constantly keep under review. I think when we talked about the move and set the date for November 20th to reopen, we said at that time that we would wait several weeks to assess the position, to see what sort of result we were having before we made any decisions. Of course, the time between November 20th and November 27th, when Omicron came along, was what, a week? So, you know, and we now have probably 40 plus or 50 plus suspected cases of, well, at least 5 or 6 confirmed and 40 or 50 plus suspected cases of Omicron. We also anticipate that there may be significant issues to be concerned about in terms of a possible spike. I'm not saying that to say that we're not going to keep an eye out on the question of phase 5. And by phase 5, just so that everybody understands, what Mr. Leacock is really asking is, when are we going to allow unvaccinated children to come in particular, allowing unvaccinated children who, you know, basically we treat them as having the status of the vaccination status of their parents. Unfortunately, in the circumstances, we're not yet in a position to arrive at any sort of conclusion on that. Now, does that mean that it may not be different in a week or 2 weeks' time? No, it doesn't mean that. But we know that this is something we have to continue to keep under review and to try our best to try to project, because we know also that we need to be able to give sufficient notice of it. And we want to be able to give enough time so that we can say to people, yes, this is definitely when we're going to do this. It's just that life's very complicated right now. A lot of issues are relevant, and we're trying to work through all these things to be in the best position to give you the best possible indication and best advice, without having to then back up on it and have a situation where people feel that we have, we've gone against our word and our promise. We don't want to be doing that. We don't want to give people false hope. We want to try to make sure that when we give indications of what we're going to do, we are able to do it. Just like we did, back in October, we said, okay, it's going to be November 20th. Despite the fact that we had, an increasing surge at that time, we maintained that position. Mm-hmm. In this current situation, we need a bit more clarity before we can make any decisions, because there's just too much information that is not fully known yet about the impacts of Omicron. And one of those in particular is, exactly what proportion of people who get sick may end up in hospital. Is it going to be similar to Delta, or is it less than Delta? If it's less than Delta, but it is 3 times as infectious and transmissible as Delta, then we still have a problem, because 3 times the infection, if it's 20% less, we're still going to have a lot more people in hospital. So unfortunately, I wish I could give my brother an answer which he'd be satisfied with, but I can't right now.
Okay. Mr. Malachi says, thank you, Honorable Premier, for all of yours and the rest of our leaders for the valuable contributions being made in keeping The Good Ship or Beautiful Cayman Islands on the right track. Best wishes for the Christmas and the New Year and far beyond.
Thank you, Malachi, and to you and your family as well. The same thing.
All right. Cameron also giving you some big up comments this evening. This is big up, Mr. Panton. Thanks for coming on and sharing your stance on CMR and the Wallas. Andrea, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
I want to know how Cameron knows that I use that term sometimes. Not in respect of people generally, but
yes,
it's a joke that you use from time to time.
I think we answered that question. Nahara, oh gosh, says 21 days to collect check payments, no direct payment. So, yeah, I mean, I think most people who work with the NAU system are aware that eventually they're going to get paid. As the Premier said, there needs to be some work done, perhaps, to kind of, shape that up a bit. So another comment says, yes, there's still a delay. Duran says, can the import duty on all building materials be decreased more to allow building costs to decrease? At current building materials duty is 15%. Can we suggest 8 to 9%? So there's a lot that's actually driving up the cost of construction at the moment. And I don't think it has anything to do with the duty. It's all the other factors right now partly related to COVID, partly related to chain and supply and demand issues all over the world. So Duran would be surprised to know that I have a friend who I think he lives in Philadelphia now. He went to law school here with me many moons ago, Ian, and I saw him the other day saying he wanted to build a man cave, like a little shed out in the backyard. And when he got some quotes for doing that in Philadelphia, it blew his mind. He was like, forget it. I can't afford a man cave right now. Yeah. What are your thoughts in terms of the cost of construction increasing? Is there anything that the government can do as the answer to that, reducing duty?
Well, if you think we've done some things already. For example, we had this situation with cement and the access, cement being sort of constrained to certain limited sources, which have become unreliable. So we allowed other sources of cement to be accessed, so that it improved reliability and it improved cost, reduced cost. So that's just one example. But I mean, I would love to be able to tell Duran that we could guarantee that we could reduce the cost of building by reducing the cost of duty. I just don't know. We'd have to analyze what impact that would have. At the end of the day, I think people will understand that the country needs a certain level of revenue in order to operate and to deliver the services that people expect. And we don't have the direct income taxes. Everything is through an indirect taxation model. There are a lot of things that are unfair about that, right? Let's be upfront. There are a lot of things that are unfair about that. It is regressive, which means that it impacts people on the lower end of the income scale more than people on the higher end of the income scale. So, but it's a system that we've had for a long time. And as usual, it's difficult to make changes to these things as we move along. We will look at it and we'll try to see how we can make changes and balance things as best as possible. I think the reality is the normal duty rate for building supplies should be about 22%. We have continued the 15% duty rate, which has been in place since I was last the minister in the 13 to 17 government. When my colleague at the time, Minister Archer, was the Minister of Finance, I think we put it down to 15% at that time. I don't remember for sure whether it had been implemented previously, but we certainly continued that. I think the last administration continued it, and now we are continuing it for now as well. I don't see any reason why that is going to change. Now, as you said, Sandra, These issues of supply chain problems, about difficulties with manufacturing, difficulties with shipping. These are problems that are created by all the uncertainties around the current times, the current pandemic scenarios, and some of these things sort of compound themselves. We also are now in an environment where the U.S. and other economies, and generally the world, is seeing a significant growth in inflation, and meaning interest rates, the cost of money, and that is going to be reflected in increasing costs for us as well. As we all know, most of our inflation is imported, meaning we don't make many products here, so it's not our local and economic environment which is creating an inflationary result. It is the first costs on the products that we're buying overseas that we need to consume and utilize to build and to live and to continue to enjoy our being and to enjoy life in Cayman. 98% of it comes, or 99% of it comes from elsewhere, and whatever is impacting their cost of acquisition and cost of sales and everything else gets passed on down the line. Government has the ability to have a little bit of an impact by reducing duty, but that building supplies in particular has had a significantly reduced duty level for some time. And now I'm not saying, as I started off with, I'm not saying we're not going to have a look at it. We will see what we can do and when we can do it. But it does not make any sense for us to break the bank and basically leave the government in a deficit position. It's not in the long-term interest of a young Caymanian for that to happen. So we have to be very careful about how we look at these things and recognize that while we have limited levers that we can pull to have an influence on these things, we will make the adjustments as much as we can to minimize the impacts.
Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much for that response. Andrea says, my Honorable Premier, please to encourage your ministers to do these programs. We need to hear from them also. Apart from MP Brian, we're not hearing from others. Cameron says, we're lucky to have our Premier on the Live with the Peeps, 12 years in the making. And here we are, groundbreaking and start towards the changes we're crying for. Flashpoint says, it's really great. Wow, all these positive comments, y'all are in the Christmas spirit. It's really great that the Premier makes himself available to take questions directly from the public. This is actual accountability. Thank you, Honorable Premier. Thank you, Flashpoint. Philip says, Cameron, we have never had a Premier as open and transparent as this one. He is leading by example. Wee chimes in, just love the PAT government. Dennis says that he's going to keep his eyes and ears on both of Anna on this chat forum. Hope to catch either of you soon. Dennis, I'm hoping to actually see you maybe tomorrow. I would not want to be in the big man position in these times. Merry Christmas. I'm still around, laughing out loud.
Merry Christmas to you too, Dennis. And belated happy birthday again.
Thank you guys for that. Nona says, Premier Panton, what's your opinion of certain schools denying remote learning for students and 14-day quarantine after returning from traveling abroad when the remote platform is available? Seems harsh to many. Nona, can you clarify, is that a private school or a government school that you're speaking of? I'd be interested to know.
I think just in relation to that, it is difficult. It is difficult for a teacher, to be able to, if you've got an in-class or in-person class going on, it's difficult to have an in-person class going on, monitor what those kids are doing, ensure that they're doing all the work that they're supposed to be doing, they're reading, they're paying attention, they're doing their activities as instructed, and also keep an eye on what's happening with an online segment of your class. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know the circumstances, but if it's a case of, let's say, for example, people travel because they want to travel, they've got they're traveling for a non-essential reason, and then they come back and they say, well, now we're back. We think that we should have the ability to participate online. I think it may be a tad unreasonable to expect the teacher or the school to some extent to be able to juggle both scenarios. I would like for them to be able to do it, and ideally they'd be able to do it. But the reality is that even at this point, even with the experience we've had, and what we've gone through last year with having school online, we still don't have it perfected enough. There are still glitches, there are still problems, and it just doesn't work very well for one teacher, or even even a teacher with an assistant, to try to run two separate class paradigms, or whatever you would call it, going on at the same time.
It's difficult. I mean, quarantine is hard. I got to tell you, we had to do isolation because my daughter and my husband caught COVID, and luckily her school had some. She's only 5, so it's very difficult in terms of the attention span. But they had some, options online for her to join in via Zoom. But it's definitely very, very challenging, folks.
It is. It is.
Mr. Denwood says, thanks, Honorable Premier, for your straightforward method of communication. Melanie has a question. Good evening to Melanie. She says, good night.
Hi, Melanie.
There's a new planning application for South Sound by the Old Crow's Nest. Okay. Pat promised reviewing development in the dynamic beach zone as urgent action. There is no mistake in putting this application out during the holidays. There will be no beach left, sadly, if we don't act now. Do you know anything about that application or that?
I only know what I've seen discussed publicly on some of the, I think it's some of the websites. I don't know specifically about that application, but I will say that one of the things my ministry did, one of the things I did early on, was to set up a multi-ministry committee, a multi-disciplinary and a multi-department committee to look at this situation with 7 Mile Beach. Now, where she's talking about is around the corner, facing south, so therefore not really a part of 7 Mile Beach. So it's past the point where the little sand key is. So you'd be coming more east in that direction. But what we are doing in relation to 12 Mile Beach, sorry, what am I saying, 12 Mile Beach? I want to go fishing is what it is. Yeah. 12 Mile Bank. So what we're doing in relation to 7 Mile Beach is, and that starts effectively in the area of sort of Grand View or wherever that place is next to, just to the south side of the Marriott. That goes then to the north, all the way up to the West Bay Public Beach and the dock up there, the actual West Bay Public Beach by Northwest Point Road. We are looking at, we've accepted a proposal that instead of allowing what has happened over the decades, instead of allowing property owners to just say, okay, we're going to go and we're going to pay a surveyor every month to go and measure exactly where the low water or the mean high water mark is. And sometimes it shifts further out. Sometimes during the year it shifts further in. So what they tend to do is they go and measure it for like 6 months, and then they then pick the one that's furthest out so that the beach is at its widest point. Even if at the time, if you measured it at that time, it may not have been, right? Mm-hmm. that approach is counterproductive. That approach causes a lot more difficulties than it's worth. And what we are doing is we've accepted a proposal which uses 10 years of the average mean high water mark data from the Lands and Survey Department. So they have been out every month and they have measured where the mean high water mark is on 7 Mile Beach every single month for the last, well, more than 10 years. But we've taken the last 10 years and then we've taken off 5% of the parameters that are sort of on the outside edges, so that we have a 95% average, which gives you a pretty consistent reference point. So we're no longer going to have people going out and measuring over 6 months to see exactly where the starting point is for that. We're going to take the average of that 10-year period, and then the committee is going to work. Again, it's my ministry. So it's a Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency. It's a Ministry of Planning. It's the Ministry of Lands. It's even the Ministry of Tourism. And they are going to, this committee, this working group, is going to work on appropriate new setback points, the setback distances. So we'll have one reference line to be able to work those setback differences from, and once that work has been done and has been accepted, we'll have to go through a process of going through Parliament, and also doing regulatory changes or changes to regulations, I should say, which will sort of give us a reset on exactly how we are set up for planning on 7 Mile Beach. Now, that there's still a lot of work to do there, and there's still a lot of public input that will be involved with that, both the public of the country as well as developers and property owners. But that same working group will also be looking at their coastline for the rest of the country to try to work out what approach should be taken there, so that we can try to end up with a consistent starting point from which we do setbacks, and put the setbacks in place, so that we don't have these actions of convenience being taken all the time, and which leads to inconsistencies, which leads to, in the case of 7 Mile Beach, we'll have somebody 1 year being able to put a wall here, and it'll be X feet from the beach, from the edge of the water, I should say, and then another year on an adjoining piece of property, they may be able to put the wall even closer to the water or further away, and it'll we can't continue to develop in these inconsistent ways, and developing and having fixed concrete structures in our dynamic beach zone, and not expect the same result where we're having tremendous erosion. And it's not, I don't want people to think that it's caused alone by these problems and by these inconsistent actions. Some of it is, to be honest, to do with sea level increase, sea level rise caused by climate change. Some of it is to do with the fact that you tend to have erosion going on at all times. Some of it is to do with the fact that we actually have less sand replenishment going on, because, as you may know, Sandra, and you'll remember from times when we were younger, we would look forward to those northwester seasons. That was when we got to wear our sweaters and our jackets, because that was the rest of the year you don't dare wear it. But when the weather's when it's nice and cloudy and it's windy and the wind is out in the north, and it's down to 65 or 70 or 72 degrees, you think, great, it's really cool. Let's wear our sweaters and our jackets. that's when we used to have sand that would get transported around the northern tip of West Bay, and it would come out into the bay, and then the sand would drop out and be a part of the beach. We're having less of that, so we have less sand that's dropping in and accumulating on the beach. We have more sand that's eroding away, and we have structures that have been traditionally put too far into the dynamic beach zone that's been causing erosion, and we've got to fix that problem. This proposal that we have will bring more consistency around it, and we are going to try to bring more consistency around the rest of the country in terms of how we set the reference line. In some places it's easy because you have Iron Shore, for example, it doesn't move very much there, and you don't get much erosion. But in other places, like South Sound, in this area where this particular application that's being referred to would relate to, that has sand that moves, that shifts, and we've got to find a consistent way of dealing with that and figuring out how you measure the reference point there from where you set the setbacks for fixed installations of walls and property equipment and foundations and all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of work being done there. There is a lot of potential to improve and get that more consistent, but it cannot be done overnight. People will have to be patient. There is work to be done. We still have to have a lot of communication. We have to have a lot of dialogue. We have to have the opinion, or the opportunity rather, for the public to express their opinions, and opportunity for others, including property owners and developers, to express their opinions, so that we end up with a fully considered approach, which hopefully gives us a better result at the end of the day, rather than 7 Mile Beach that looks like it's washing up underneath some of the hotels and some of the properties there.
Ms. Loretta, are we taking WhatsApp messages? We are. It's just so many that have come in. I saw someone, I think that was Claire, asking if we skipped a question. Claire, I think you asked about 15 questions. So in the spirit of Christmas and the spirit of giving, we're giving other people an opportunity to get some questions in. Malachi says, to your point, the Honorable Premier, Mr. Panton, if those coastline surveyors are measuring due to various tropical climate changes, or at times on those variable El Nino and La Nina, so I guess agreeing that there's some variation.
So you might have variations that occur within the year, or you might have variations that occur over a 2 or 3 or 4 year cycle, which is what I guess that question originates from.
Yes.
And you shouldn't end up with inconsistent approaches, just depending on which particular year or which particular month you make an application.
All right.
Back in the 70s and earlier, I think they used the vegetation line as the reference point, and then that was shifted from the vegetation line to, might have been the high water mark, and then it became the mean high water mark. I don't remember exactly, but you can understand the logic of the old folks when they said, let's use the vegetation line, because if the vegetation has been in a particular place for years, that means there hasn't been any erosion there, right? And the beach should be safe if you use that as the reference point. But we in our wisdom years ago, we decided to change that. We shifted it from the vegetation line, and we made it the high water mark, and then the mean high water mark. So what we're trying to do now is just reintroduce some consistency and fairness in that process, while we also then consider realistically where we should be setting the setbacks for different types of development and different parts of developments. And we should not be granting all these exemptions and variations to setbacks too, because if you end up doing a lot of variations to to setbacks, then that becomes the de facto approach or the de facto setbacks rather than being the exception.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that response. We do have a WhatsApp question. Good night, Sandy. Could you please ask Mr. Premier? I applied for the stipend because I was in isolation for a COVID case from November. Until now, I haven't gotten anything. What ministry are those applications falling under?
I think that particular stipend would fall under the Ministry of Finance. Well, all the stipends are being shifted over to the Ministry of Finance, because the tourism-related stipend is going over to Ministry of Finance because, first of all, it's finance-related. Secondly, it is that particular ministry is combined with labor and ESO and whatnot. So they have more people with the skill sets necessary to assist in that respect. But I think that the COVID related gratuity payments to help support families that were impacted negatively fell under the finance ministry.
Okay. So we'll try to get her some help directly from that ministry if we can. Kimberly, we are in overtime, so we got to wrap it up here. Kimberly has a question about why is the planning board approving so many developments around the island? Who are we building and growing for? And does the government realize that there are many young Caymanians who would love to purchase homes and can't?
Yes, Kimberly, we certainly are aware of the challenges that young people are finding and in being able to afford some of their own country. And that is why we are proposing a number of different things to try to assist in respect to that. We are looking at how we structure the stamp duty concessions and stamp duty abatements to assist our young people. And we've also got to challenge. We've got to deal with the sort of the root causes of some of this as well. The reality, though, is that it's difficult because if we were to do something which suddenly caused a decrease in the value of the real estate market, that is going to create a lot of knock-on problems, consequential problems for many other people. I don't know that we need to go into the details of it, but obviously if people will could end up having problems with their ability to service their mortgages and all sorts of stuff, or their ratios might be thrown out. We'd be very unpopular with the people if, because of some action we took, suddenly the land values crashed. So that is not an option for us. We've got to address the problems and try to make changes slowly to try to build in a fairer system and to get a better balance so that our people are not, and our young people in particular, are able to and allowed to be able to afford a part of the Cayman dream. Unfortunately, we've got to continue a degree of growth. We've got to continue some development, but it has to be taken in the right way for the right reasons. Our people have to benefit from it, and it has to be sustainable. And it is not easy to wave a magic wand and make it all happen. We've got to do it slowly, methodically, and it has to happen over a period of years. It can't happen in a few months.
All right, Janet says, Premier of and for the Caymanian people, give them time and a little bit of grace. Rome wasn't built in a day. Andrea says, Kimberly, why do you think that these approvals were granted by the PAC government, not the previous government? People are expecting you guys to do a lot in 8 months. Lots of miracles people are expecting.
Well, I mean, we deal in expectations, and
yes,
and
you got to manage those carefully.
We have to, exactly. So our role is not only to try to deliver solutions for the people of the country, but our role is also to be honest and to manage people's expectations. I am not going to lie to you and tell you I can do something in a certain time period when I know it's going to take 3 times as long. I am somebody that I would much rather under promise and over deliver than promise you the moon and put you down in a cave.
All right, folks, let's wrap it up. I know you guys have so many more questions. Miss Loretta said, good night, Mr. Premier and Sandy. Keep up the good work and answering the people and being fair. Listen, we appreciate the Premier coming on the program, folks. He's had a long day and he still commits to doing this every other Wednesday here with us. So, Loretta, thank you again. Let's see. Claire, I think your question, Claire, I actually saw the question, and I think your question is better suited for the interim chief medical officer, and we hope to have her in the program soon. So, Claire, I would invite you to tune back in to get the details of exactly how that procedure works. Please ask the grouper question. So the grouper question is, and this will be our final question of the evening, why did they extend the grouper ban for another month from April to May? And this is affecting a lot of Caymanians' way of earning a living. Wahoo and other fish that are overfished do not have a ban.
Natalisha Bennett. I wasn't aware of an individual by that name who was that interested in grouper. Grouper are obviously a very important species for the environment on the reef, on our reefs. It helps to keep our reefs healthy, just like a shark population. A reasonable shark population is best for our reefs' health as well. Cayman used to have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 grouper spawning sites. The Brack and Little Cayman had 2, the east end and the west end. The Brack had the east end and the west end. The only viable spawning aggregation site in the Cayman Island right now is on the west end of Little Cayman. We do have grouper in Cayman who go up to the spawning aggregation site off Cox and Bank on the east end of the island. They go up there. Groupers are intelligent species. If there's 500 of them there, they know that that's not enough for them to start having a healthy spawn. So they don't engage in it. They know they're going to end up with, the gene pool is too small. But if we protect those spawning aggregation sites and we stop people from being able to fish them during that time of the year, then we end up protecting the species and the ability for the species to make a comeback and to populate all of our reefs and to even restart some of the other spawning aggregation sites. When I was 12 or 13 years old and I learned to dive at Casa Bartmar in Georgetown, which was located between the Esso tanks and the let me just call them Esso and Texaco. I think it's Rubis and Sol now, or whatever it is now. I forget. The names have changed. I can't remember. But between the tanks, there used to be a dive resort there. It became Blue Parrot afterwards, and I don't know what it is now. I don't know if it's even a resort. It's not a resort. Maybe condos. I don't know. But it used to be a dive resort. Right up front there was where I learned to dive at the age of 12 or 13. I can't remember exactly. It was my first job. And it took me years to realize it was my first job ever, and it was in tourism. But I worked at this dive lodge, and that reef out there had about 15 to 20 full-grown Nassau groupers. And I was very familiar with them because we had a 7-foot moray eel that we used to feed out there. We started feeding him by the end of a spear, then it was the end of a knife, and then it was by hand. And that was in my lifetime. And in my lifetime, all of those groupers disappeared. Wow. You cannot find those kinds of groupers on the reefs in Cayman any longer. Yes, there are some groupers around, but there's hardly any. So our challenge as a society is to try to make sure that we protect what's there now, and we try to reestablish those spawning aggregation sites, because they are the maternity wards of the country. And for groupers, if we allow people to fish in them, we destroy the spawning aggregations, and we destroy the future of the grouper species. If we leave them alone and protect them when they're aggregating there, we end up for the rest of the year with healthy grouper populations all around the islands. And once we do that, the reefs are in better shape. Our fishing is better. People will enjoy it more. And those people who say that they make a living from eating and catching grouper will have a better chance of doing that if we can protect those species in there where they spawn. So don't allow people to take them out of the maternity wards. By the way, wahoo and dolphin and tuna and marlin and all those other species, those are not reef species. Those are pelagics. They wander around in the ocean, and they pass by periodically. They don't live around here. They're just passing through, and we're catching them. The groupers, they don't wander across the ocean to Cuba. They live here in this little strip of coral reef that we have around our islands. That's all it is. So we have to protect it. And that's why we protect the spawning aggregation sites. Interesting question from.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect such a comprehensive answer, but I forget that you fish. You're in the water a lot, and like you said, your first job was actually in tourism. So quite interesting. Nona's begging us to do one more question.
Sure.
So her question is, she says, since the new variant is here, could there be a change in children being allowed to attend school after taking an initial PCR test, then lateral flow testing daily after returning from abroad? So actually, Nona, he's answered this question already. So I'm going to invite you. She's saying that travel is important to mental health. He answered this early in the program about children. And so I would invite you to probably just hit the rewind button, perhaps after the show. And you'll
the answer to that is it's just not yet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We need to know more. I'd love to be able to say, yes, we can fix that problem for you. But we do have, the potential solution, which we discussed at the start of the show, which is that we are on the cusp of being able to provide vaccines to kids who are between 5 and 11. And I think that will make a huge difference.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. Alric is sending some information in the Grouper Moon project. So click on that link, folks, to check that out. Really, really important. Damien, thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening. Cameron says, have a wonderful Christmas. Very informative discussion tonight with the Premier. Great session, says Troy. Thanks, Mr. Premier and CMR. What's in your pot on Saturday morning? Cameron wants to know for Christmas dinner. What can you expect in your household?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest.
You're just going to show up.
I'm going to decide probably a day or two before. Probably by tomorrow, I'll decide. I'll probably have a few family members over, and somebody will bring a bit of turtle, and somebody will bring a bit of Cayman beef, and we'll have a bit of ham and that sort of thing, and typical stuff. I love to cook turkeys, but I bought a couple tonight. I may just cook them and give them to some people, or I may keep one for myself. Somebody may get lucky and they may get to taste my turkey.
All right, very good. All right, folks. Again, we would like to thank the Premier for making some time to come on the program this evening. This is obviously the last segment, I think, for the new year. Yes. So we'll see him in 2022 here on Premier Access every other Wednesday from 7 until 9 to answer it's a Q&A segment to answer your questions directly. So if you didn't get your questions answered, join us back on the 5th of January, and he'll be more than happy to answer your questions then. And please, folks, when you come in, you might have 20 questions, but don't be like those other media houses when they go to a press conference and they're greedy, want to take up all the time. Share. Pick your top 2 or your top 3 And the more we do that, maybe the more the Premier can get through all those questions. So thank you, Mr. Perry, for joining. Cameron, what are the hours for New Year's Eve? I think we're going to probably get announcements a little bit closer to that, Cameron. So just stay tuned to all media houses. I'm sure we'll be all sharing the same information. Premier Panton, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on the program as always. And Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you, Sandra. And I wish that I had some Christmas decorations that I could put around my neck as well.
Yes.
You've certainly set the tone with those decorations around your neck.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you very much to you, as always, for the incredible job that you do informing the people of the country, and providing these platforms and these opportunities to talk to people and discuss issues. It's pretty interesting that you go from one extreme to another with these types of questions, but I don't mind it.
By the way, can I squeeze one more in, because I did mean to ask Paula's. Hers came in at 8:15. My apologies. And this is something we have been discussing on the show, so that's the reason I really want to squeeze it in. Now this is about listen. This is a sore point here in the program. It says, I believe that someone who's been convicted for an offense related to dishonesty and or fraud is ineligible to be appointed as a member to a public board. Can the Premier help me understand how someone who was tried and convicted for breaching the public trust was recently appointed to the Public Transport Board? It's been discussed. So any thoughts?
Yeah. Listen, that's a fair question, right? And it's not something that I'm going to duck. And we all have different opinions on it. I know certain people that are, have been in that situation. And I will tell you that I have said, this is my view. And I think that we've got to set the right example for the people of the country. But there's also this competing side, which is, do people who have made mistakes, do they continue to pay for those mistakes for the rest of their life, and never be given an opportunity to be a part of anything like this ever again? Or is there a point at which it happens? I find it difficult at times, and I probably have different opinions from some of my colleagues, but this is the way it works. I mean, whether you're a group of people, whether you're people who are in a specific party. I was a part of the PPM on the last time I was in government, and you have the same discussions, you have the same differences of opinion, no matter whether you're under one color shirt or another. So I can see both sides of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And
let me ask
probably
you.
fair to say, it's probably fair to say that people know me as a more conservative person. But I have colleagues who perhaps maybe less conservative and may feel more that that everybody deserves to have a second chance and deserves to have an opportunity to have some input. If all I can tell you is that my view is today, right now, if you do wrong, I'm gonna take an action, some way, some form, to take you off the board, or out of that position. If it is something that has happened in the past, and you've paid your penance, I might be able to be convinced. So it depends on a lot of different things. But Sandra, you know me, I tend to be on the more conservative side.
Yes.
So if you were to be a fly on the wall listening to conversations, you might not be surprised of my perspective, my position on certain things. But politics is about a combination of views, a discussion, a dialogue, and a conclusion based on the sort of majority opinion. And unless you can point to a hard and fast rule to say something should be this way or that way, then it comes down to really you deciding as a group, what the majority position is. And in relation to something like this, there are no rules, right? There's nothing that says, you can't do this, you can't die, you're disqualified. It's not like running for public office, where the Constitution and the election law says, if you do this or that. I mean, if you're running for elections, the Constitution says if you have committed an offense involving dishonesty, or I should say, you've been sentenced to an offense which is more than 12 months or more than 12 months. I don't remember exactly how it goes. You're disqualified from running. There is nothing in the public authorities law, as far as I'm aware. Actually, I'm not even sure the public authorities law applies to the public transport board. It probably does not. But I'm pretty sure that there's no guiding legislation that says this should be the position. Now, should we have that? I think we should. Personally, I think we should.
Yep.
I think we should have provisions that would say these are the kinds of situations in which someone will be able to serve or not be able to serve.
Yeah. And it's peculiar, Premier Panton, because I want to show you this document here that was sent to me by someone else who they were applying to be on. I think this is one of the boards, I guess, requires an application, whereas some don't. And there's a little bit of confusion about how there's so many different criteria for board appointments. But in this instance, number C actually says this person has to declare that they have not been convicted in the Cayman Islands or elsewhere even of any offense involving dishonesty, fraud, or any other offense that is likely to bring the office into disrepute. So here it is in black and white as one of just 4 requirements for someone who was applying to be on another board.
Right.
So it is very, very peculiar that it's not a standard across the board, but maybe that's something you could add to your checklist right after the code of conducts for politicians.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think I said previously that we were working on that, and I was hoping to finalize that at the beginning of next year, which is just around the corner. I'm still holding to that. But this, you live and learn, right? These are things that you perhaps haven't anticipated, and you realize that this is an issue that needs to be resolved. Now, that particular document that you had on the screen, I think that relates to a particular statutory authority. So the law itself may prescribe that, or the Public Authorities Act may prescribe that, but I think it's the actual law relative to that particular authority. So what we need to do is we need to take a position, and we need to create either by policy or regulations, requirements which apply to all of these boards that they're in which there are public appointments by elected officials.
Yep.
Right? We need to apply consistent, fair standards to all of them. Right?
Absolutely.
So people know exactly what the position is. It's there in black and white. And if somebody satisfies it, they satisfy it. If they don't, then they know that there's no argument about it. So I agree that we should look at this, and it's something that I will commit to working on within my ministry to try to take forward.
We appreciate it. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and thank you very, very much to the Premier. My apologies for going into overtime a little bit this evening.
Right. Thank you very much. It's always easy to spend extra time when you're enjoying yourself. And as I was saying earlier, thank you very much. I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. I want to wish the people of our wonderful Cayman Islands a very Merry Christmas. Please be safe, and let's have a happy, a good New Year's. Let's go into 2022 with all the opportunity that presents to make life better, to make life fairer, and to allow the people of this country to have great lives, to chase whatever opportunities they want, to live their best lives ever. And thank you very much. I want to say to the people of Newlands, Merry Christmas, love you all, and I will try to be around I'm going to be in the office here. We've done the Santa thing with kids. I know there are a few kids who were disappointed. We didn't catch all of you. I apologize, but we're going to try to make it better next time, so that we can do everything and get everybody. Really appreciate it. Love you all. Take care, and let's have a very safe, very Merry Christmas to everyone. Even
right.
the Humanians who are abroad. Love you too. Thank you for your continued interest in your home, your homeland, and your continued contributions.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, folks. And as always, you guys know we're bringing you some breaking news. So we are aware of a little bit of action that's going on in town at the moment, in the vicinity of Funky Tangs, going straight up on part of Eastern Avenue, all the way up to Popeyes. So not quite sure what's happening, but please, I would advise just staying out of the area and giving the police an opportunity to simply do their job unencumbered in any way, because it's clearly some sort of a police operation. So thank you, Marva. She says, Merry Christmas, Premier and family, and also Sandy and family. One love from Cameron. Folks, tune in tomorrow morning, 7:30, bright and early, for another episode of The Cold Hard Truth. And we will probably by then know what is popping off in Georgetown tonight. Again, some really interesting conversations. We quite enjoyed it. You guys have a wonderful, fantabulous evening. And let me leave you with something to make you chuckle. This video came across us, and I told you, when I saw it, I just had a really good laugh. So I hope that you enjoy it as well.
Yes. Well, you don't really need to thank us for that. We don't have any say who wins a People's Choice Award. Yeah, it's right there in the name. All right. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. Amen. Hello, God's tech support. No, sorry, he's busy. How can I help? Pandemic. Sure. Awful. Let's just check. I see here we did send you some scientists and doctors, and it looks like they've come up with some simple ways to help end the pandemic. Vaccines, masks, simple stuff. Ah, you don't trust them. And the reason? Some politicians, podcast hosts, and someone on Facebook said not to. I see. Okay, so let's see if I understand this correctly. There's a pandemic that's killed millions worldwide. You have the solutions to help end the pandemic, but you don't want to. Don't worry. I think I know what the issue is. You have what we in tech support call a 1D10T problem. That's right. If you could just write that down. Yeah. 1D10T. That's right. It does look like it spells idiot. Hey, I think we're going to have to reboot Earth.